on this part of the debate. Opening up the debate with Arun Jaitley on our budget night. Arun Jaitley, Manish, Tewari, Sitaram, Yechury joining us on this part of the debate, and we have more leaders lined up in a few minutes. Now, Arun Jaitley, the finance minister, self-certification. No policy paralysis, he says. Nothing ever went wrong. We've got the economy back on track. Fiscal deficits are under control. Current account deficit is looking good. I'm looking good. I've done the best I could in 2 years. And I think people should congratulate me for what I've done, seemed to be the tone of the finance minister today. To the finance minister and to the minister representing the government, Manish Tewari, on the Newshour this evening, what would you say, Arun Jaitley?
Well, I think we can be more charitable to the finance minister. He almost conceded that this was a farewell speech. That's why he said that let history judge us. And therefore, when a man is making a farewell speech, he is entitled to be a little more than kind to himself. And I think that's what the finance minister did today. Now, the benchmark that he had set for himself was that the fiscal deficit should be lower than 4.8%. Now, he had to achieve that come what may. He couldn't achieve that by revenue buoyancy. He couldn't achieve that with the revenues going up. He couldn't achieve that with the economy expanded. He couldn't achieve that with the economic activity and the volumes of economic activity expanding. So he achieved that by somewhat a dubious process. Let me cut down expenditure. He cut down expenditure when it came to capital expenditure. And when you cut down capital expenditure, you are being unkind to the future years and to the next generation. So he cut down on grants to the states. He cut down on social sector expenditure. He cut down on infrastructural expenditure. So you cut down expenditure all over and say, listen, I've spent less and therefore the country has been able to save more and therefore I have a presentable optical view as far as fiscal deficit is concerned. I think that's what he tried to achieve. But when you cut down all these expenditures, you shrink and contract the economy. Therefore, the growth rates are going to be challenging for the next successor. And as I wrote today in a small piece, that Mr. Chidambaram will feel a relieved man. I think the real worries are going to be for his successor.
Did he play around with the numbers? Was he dishonest with the numbers, Manish Tewari? And why is it so important to achieve a number when the numbers backing it are not completely realistic or honest? I mean, let's look at the big achievement of fiscal deficit that he says he will maintain. He admits there will be 35,000 crores of fuel subsidies which will be rolled over, which basically means that I'm only taking one example that had this rollover happened, the fiscal deficit would have been much higher. Now, my question to you, Mr. Manish Tewari, is what is more important? Giving the country an honest perspective or giving the finance minister a good report card?
Well, I think, Mr. Goswami, unfortunately, it seems you and your very eminent panelists have got it all wrong. First of all, to the point about the farewell speech, if Mr. Arun Jaitley was to just rewind to Mr. Jaswant Singh's budget speech of 2004, he would find that possibly the same phraseology was used by Mr. Jaswant Singh, when he signed off on the vote on account. So therefore, was the NDA in 2004 really bidding farewell to itself when it presented the vote on account? So therefore, to draw that extrapolation, I think is erroneous to say the least. Number two, coming to whether the finance minister had indulged in a process of self-certification which was dubious, I think the finance minister very honestly presented the perspective of the last 10 years. And the singular thing which came out was that wherever you draw the poverty line, whichever figures that you may take, 140 million people have been lifted out of poverty in the last 10 years. And the fact also remains that notwithstanding the global economy going into a twin crisis, the great meltdown and then the Eurozone crisis, even between 2004 and 2009 and 2014, the economy clocked 6.6%. And if you were to juxtapose it against what other emerging economies have been doing in terms of growth rate, you would find that India has done much, much better. And to the point as to whether, subsidies were rolled over. Let's not forget this is a vote on account. This is not a full-fledged budget. So therefore, there obviously could not be any revenue mobilization proposals. Therefore, a provision has been made. So a provision has been made for the expenditure which the government is going to incur, and not only expenditure which has been budgeted for. But allow me to also point out, Mr. Goswami, that what Mr. Jaitley said, that expenditure of states was cut 5.5 lakh crores. On an average, I don't have the exact figure with me, but 5.5 lakh crores is what the central government is going to transfer to the state governments. And if you look at the trend line of the transfer from 2004 and 2014, it's been going up every year. So therefore, I think on each count, the finance minister possibly presented a picture which was correct, which was objective, and which told the story as it has unfolded.
No, but that's all. No, one second. Just hold your thoughts there, Mr. Manish Tewari, because first of all, I think we'll have to get Mr. Jaitley to respond. But before that, Mr. Jaitley, with your permission, I'd like to get Sitaram Yechury also into this debate to just know where he stands. Mr. Tewari, I mean, in one shot, when the finance minister of India contradicts the Congress vice president who said there are so many loopholes in decision making, you can drive a truck through them. When the finance minister contradicts the prime minister of India who says before the AICC that decision making has totally slowed down, then I think I'd really be concerned where the information and broadcasting minister stands between the Congress vice president and the prime minister. I'm sure you won't contradict both by saying Mr. Chidambaram is correct. Unless you decide to be with Mr. Chidambaram and therefore contradict Rahul Gandhi and Manmohan Singh in the same breath.
Mr. Goswami,
anyway.
Notwithstanding your attempt to be insidious or humorous or maybe both, let me very respectfully point out that the Honorable Finance Minister was absolutely correct when he said that over 6 lakh crores of projects, which were lying locked up because of various regulatory and other issues, have been cleared in the Cabinet Committee on Investments over the past year and a half. So therefore, when he rejected the notion of a policy paralysis, he was absolutely correct. And yes, there are issues with regard to decision making.
Can I make a point here?
Were because of extraneous and external circumstances
I'm getting a rebut from... I'm getting a rebut. Okay, one second.
Allow me to just complete and I'll hear the rebut in entirety.
Is coming in after that. One second.
I'll hear the rebut in entirety.
Let the two other panelists... No.
So you asked me a question. I'm going to keep quiet otherwise.
Not contradicting Rahul Gandhi. That's fine.
No, you asked me a question. Otherwise, I would have allowed you to go on to Mr. Yechury. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Tewari. But my basic point is that you see, as far as policy paralysis is concerned, that may be a problem in the government in other fields, but our state of the economy is not because of policy paralysis. The state of the economy is because of policy, period. It is the policy that is being followed which is responsible for the economic woes, and therefore, look at it from that point of view, that the fiscal deficit target was a target that Mr. Chidambaram set for himself and this government set for itself of keeping it below 4.8% of the GDP. Now, how has that been achieved? Just have a quick look at the figures that the finance minister himself put out today. The gross tax revenue is falling short by close to 80,000 crores of rupees. And how did this shortfall is made up by saying that you reduce fiscal deficit? It's been more than made up by cuts in your expenditures. From your budgetary estimates that he gave last year to what is the revised estimates that he put out today, you will find that the central plan outlay has been cut down by, not spent, what has been allocated by something like a whopping 66,000 crores of rupees. Your plan, our central plan was reduced by 63,000 odd crores of rupees. Likewise, your assistance to plan expenditure for the states and union territories has been reduced by close to 18,000 crores. So by contracting your expenditures, you've contracted the economy. and by contracting the economy, you can show that the fiscal deficit has been controlled. But the net result is that you have a compounding of the economic slowdown. So it is not policy paralysis, it's the policy per se which is slowing down your economy and thereby increasing the woes on the people, which the finance minister admits that food inflation is worrisome. So the net result is that this fiscal deficit target has been achieved through a contraction.
At this stage, I understand. This is a very serious charge, and I'd like to just summarize this before I go back to Mr. Jaitley. A very serious charge emerges at this stage of the Newshour debate, where, Mr. Tewari, the government faces the charge of using tricks in the book to make the numbers appear better than they are. Let's not forget, subsidies expenditure should have been dispersed in 2013-14 of 123,000 crores, which is a tad more than 1% of India's GDP. It was rolled over by the government to keep the fiscal deficit lower than the 13-14 target of 4.8% of the GDP. So you are using these tricks in the book, which in my view are fairly transparent, to make your numbers look better than they are, which is the charge here, that you cannot certify yourself on the basis of doubtful numbers, Mr. Tewari. But yet, before you respond on the question of policy paralysis, I think Mr. Jaitley also wanted to come in. Mr. Jaitley.
Well, I have just 3 points to make on this. How is it that the rest of the world is looking at the Indian economy? From 1991 till 2004, the world looked at India as a good investment destination. There was a certain amount of confidence that we gave to the world at large, and investors were willing to come in. Post 2004, I think UPA 1 partly survived on account of the impetus of the past policies. But then UPA 1 was caught between two distinct ideologies. The party bosses wanted a pursuit of populism, where you can straight away go in for vote banks rather than prudence. And the government decision makers caved into the party bosses. Slowly we moved to a situation where Indian economy has gone down as far as the investor priorities are concerned. The domestic investors are also looking elsewhere. Secondly, Mr. Chidambaram became the finance minister in 2004. He inherited a growth rate of 8.5%. Rather than just touting their own logic, last 3 years, you are leaving behind an economy where the average growth rate of 3 years is less than 5%. Thirdly, Mr. Tewari can today come and boast of the fact that we have a cabinet committee on investment which has cleared projects worth 6 lakh crores. These are projects, more than 300 projects worth 7 lakh crores, which have been held up for 4-5 years. They were held up for want of political leadership in the government. They were held up because the Prime Minister could not overrule ministers who were objecting. And therefore, investors who wanted to invest in those projects really were losing confidence in the Indian economy. People started looking elsewhere. Now when you found that the backlog had really mounted up, in the last few months you constitute a cabinet committee and say, well, I start clearing all these projects. You don't boast of the paralysis of the last 6 years, but you say, well, in the last 4 months I have cleared these projects. So I am a very active government as far as these projects are concerned. I think by the time they did that, it's become too late. And once it's become too late, probably the world today feels that if the economy is to be revived, you not only need a policy impetus, you also need a political change in India.
Well, I think that's a straight and tough point that's been made, Mr. Jaitley. I know you have to go. I thank you for your participation. It's always great to have you on our budget debates. Welcome, Ravi Shankar Prasad. Welcome to the debate. This debate becomes bigger right now. Ravi Shankar Prasad, welcome to the debate. The opposition leader is replaced by the deputy opposition leader in the Rajya Sabha. On our Newshour debate, Derek O'Brien of the Trinamool Congress. So we have full participation across the spectrum. Rajiv Chandrasekhar, Member of Parliament and entrepreneur. Welcome. Now I put that question here. Should we first, before we answer that, do you agree with Derek with what Arun Jaitley said just before he left there, that the whole idea of fiscal prudence as well as trying to push the economy was far too late a December 2013 realization for this government?
Well, we left this government, Trinamool, you realize, left the government in September 2012.
Yes.
But I think before I'm going to give you 2 or 3 of our broad observations today. Our first observation is that we really believe what we saw. We don't think the finance minister was even interested in presenting this budget. If you watch the footage very carefully.
Come on, we're not discussing body language.
No. He actually tried 3 times to stop presenting the budget.
What are you saying?
That's not true.
What are you?
Watch
the footage.
In fact, there were members of parliament from Andhra Pradesh opposing it, and he was trying to get them off so that he could read his budget. That's what you have to give him.
You watch the footage. I was there in the gallery. At least twice he sent message to come. I'll not do this. I'll stop. I don't want to do this. So
why? What do you mean?
Okay, let's get to the substantive point.
The substantive point is, to me it was summed up in one sentence. He said, "Let history be the judge of the last 10 years." Well, the reality is history will not be the judge. The people will be the judge in the next few months. But he told one blatant lie. And before I say anything else,
that's a very serious term.
Yeah, before I say anything else he told absolute blatant lie, and that was on GDP, on GST. I beg your pardon. On GST, he gave the impression that there were states who were holding up GST. Yes. My charge is that there were certain clear promises made to the states on handling CST, on bringing CST down from 4% to 2%, and there was 20,000 crores to be paid to the states. I can talk about Bengal, certainly Bihar, and so many other states who were owed 20,000 crores. And the only reason GST hasn't come through, nothing to do with the states, it is the finance minister's fault. That was a blatant lie. Everything else we can discuss later.
Okay, fine. Ravi Shankar Prasad, I'd like you to come in here. On the points, Ravi Shankar Prasad, on the points that Arun Jaitley raised there, would you want to back them up? We've had a clear self-certification by Mr. Chidambaram for his own role and a denial of policy paralysis. Which in your view is the more controversial of the points Mr. Chidambaram made in his speech today?
It was not a declaration of self-certification, Arnab. It was a command performance of self-certification bereft of any substance. All right, let me differ with my good friend Derek. I grant him that history will judge him. He can make that claim. But he has to explain how the very competent, quote-unquote, Harvard-educated finance minister, who brought a legacy of 8.5% of growth, admittedly, which he commended in his economic survey of 2004-05 as the best in 30 years, except 2 years, that was the period of Mr. Bajpayee government, how he squandered it away to 4.8%. Mr. Bajpayee government began at 4.8% in 1998. And now we are hearing a lot about international factors, global meltdown. When Mr. Bajpayee government was there, in which I had the privilege to serve as a minister, there was Kargil war. There was Pokhran II international sanction by the entire world. There was attack on the parliament. There was 2002 drought. There was East Asian economic crisis. There was earthquake in Gujarat. Yet, we did not talk of any alibi. We came at 4.8, and when we demitted office,
but
we left
still
at 8.5.
they keep saying, no, 1 second. They keep saying that there may have been a fall in growth. There may have been a fall in growth, Rajiv Chandrasekhar. I want you to come in as a neutral arbiter on this. They say, yes, there is a fall in growth, but the UPA government has provided a better growth rate compared to the NDA government. Rajiv Chandrasekhar, now I know there is a lot of clutching at straws as far as the government is concerned. At
Come on, Arnab, is it fair? Is it fair? In the last 4 years, what they have done to the economy?
I don't want to say it's fair. No, I'm not one to say whether it's fair or not fair, but the numbers, they use the numbers to throw it back at you.
History will judge him very harshly. Very harshly. For having squandered India's economy.
Okay, Rajiv,
because of policy paralysis,
Rajiv, what would you
because
say
of corruption, because of scam, because of inflation, unemployment.
My opinion, Arnab, if you look at this very dispassionately and you cut through all the hype and the rhetoric which is commonplace with the election season, there is a couple of things that are absolutely indisputable. One is that this economy today is at its worst ever. Now, you can argue, and Mr. Chidambaram can argue, that it is not worse than last year, and therefore it is bottoming out. But is this government leaving the budget, is government leaving the economy in good shape for the next government? Absolutely no. In 2004, the government inherited an economy that was strong, robust, fiscally extremely strong because there was something called the Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Bill in place. This government came out and repealed that bill. And we have seen for 10 years, and most recently in the last 5 years, a profligacy of the kind that we have never seen, and we have the chickens that are coming home to roost today. So notwithstanding all the data and the statistical illusions and delusions that are being cast in the budget, one thing is for sure, that we are at the bottom in terms of where the economy is. Now, there can be a tenuous argument made that it hasn't gotten worse compared to last year, but that is it. There cannot be any argument that this is a robust economy.
Yeah. Why this benchmarking with last year, Manish Tewari? Why this benchmarking with last year? Is it because you felt you had fallen to the lowest point that you could have?
Well, I think, Mr. Goswami, now that you've given all your panelists a chance and each of them has taken his pot shot, allow me to answer all of it one by one. First of all, to Mr. Sitaram Yechury's point about a contraction in expenditure. I would have wished that if Mr. Sitaram Yechury would have read the central plan and the state plans together, and he would have found that insofar as flagship programs are concerned, there has not been any contraction in expenditure. Each flagship program, in terms of both its central and state component, is fully funded. Number two, to come to Mr. Arun Jaitley's point, unfortunately he is not here, that in 2004, investors were looking at India, and in 2014, investors have run away. If that is the case, how did $175 billion of FDI come into India in the last 4 years? The third point, that if the Indian economy was not being looked at by investors favorably, how is it that Indian exports between 2004 and 2014 went up from almost 2 lakh crores to 16 lakh crores? Now, coming to Mr. Derek O'Brien's point about the finance minister. Allow me to complete. His point about the finance minister not being interested in presenting the vote on account. I think, though it is speculous and frivolous, but the fact is that the finance minister was trying to have calm and order in the House, so that whatever he was reading out was audible not only to the members but to the country at large. Insofar as Mr. Ravi Shankar Prasad is concerned, of course, he's gone across the board in terms of firing all 6 cylinders. I'm answering each of them one by one. He said that, they bequeathed to the UPA a very buoyant economy. May I ask him that between 1998 and 2004, is it not a fact that the average growth rate was only 5.8%? Is it not a fact that between 2004 and 2009, the average growth rate was 8.6%? Is it not a fact that despite a global economic meltdown and a Eurozone crisis, the economy performed at 6.6%?
No, Mr. Tewari, he's saying you're not answering his question. I'm answering all the questions. Repeat his question to you.
I'm answering all the questions.
On GST, he says, on GST, and Ravi Shankar Prasad has also went up there.
On the goods and service tax, the finance minister. No, I'm answering on the GST also. There were so many questions. I was answering it one by one. On the GST, you had the Prime Minister going on record that there were political parties and state governments which were dovetailing extraneous considerations onto the entire GST paradigm. If you recall, Mr. Goswami, in the interaction which the electronic editors, and you were there, in the interaction which the electronic media editors had with the Prime Minister. It is in that press conference the Prime Minister made this point. So therefore, when you have extraneous considerations and political considerations weighing on to the GST paradigm, obviously the finance minister would say that, it's extremely regrettable that it couldn't go through.
At the group of finance ministers, assurance was given. That group was convened by the finance minister of Bihar of the JDU. the finance minister of Bengal, all the finance ministers were there. 4% CST was supposed to be brought down to 2%. There was an agreement. There was a backlog of 20,000 crores. My state share was 1,200 crores. Nothing was done. Then the plug was pulled.
I have just
the GST.
Well, I think Mr. Derek O'Brien,
did not keep their word.
If you would have just rewound to the entire GST debate, you would have found that there was enough evidence to suggest that if GST would have come in place, the 1 percentage point growth in GDP just because of GST would have offset a lot of the numbers that you're banding about in the public space.
Yechury is intervening. 1 second. Sitaram Yechury is intervening, and then I'm opening up. By the way, let me place on record, before I come to you, let me place on record that I find the confidence of Manish Tewari on the issue of foreign investors' faith in India and the fact that there is no policy paralysis. I must pay you a compliment this evening, Manish Tewari. I find your confidence absolutely stunning, given the fact that your own Prime Minister's monitoring group has had no faith in the fact that $15 trillion worth of industrial projects were stalled because your government did not have the wherewithal, the will, the spine and the alacrity to speed them up. The power sector and the steel sector were the worst affected. And yet you say there was no policy paralysis, which is why I'm saying tonight, I find your confidence stunning. I see a hand go up there, Manish Tewari. Don't respond.
Let me rebut it.
Prasad, before you, I allow a small interjection.
Allow me, Mr. Goswami, before you go to Ravi Prasad.
Mr. Goswami,
I have many points. Allow me to answer that.
Let Sitaram Yechury come in. Let Sitaram. I will allow you. I will allow you.
Or rather a lot of expletives which are subterfuged as adjectives, allow me to answer that straight off. Yes.
Mr. Tewari.
Mr. Tewari, why don't you answer one more question that I'll pose to you?
Subterfuge as adjectives, allow me to answer that straight off.
I can't.
The fact is that because of external circumstances,
accusing me of using expletives on television.
That was in a lighter vein, but because of external circumstances which were outside the framework of government as we know it, there was a slowdown, but it is this government which acted and which was able to unlock bottlenecks worth 6,60,000 crores. So therefore, I mean, if that is policy paralysis, I do not know what policy activism is.
I don't know.
Can I come in again?
1 second. Sitaram Yechury wanted to rebut. Sitaram Yechury.
Yes,
after that, Ravi Shankar Prasad. Yes,
you see, an election time is a bad time to talk economics and economic policy. And I think that is exactly what's happening, because what Mr. Tewari is saying and what Mr. Ravi Shankar Prasad, an old friend of mine, and we have countered each other under the glare of these lights many years ago. And then you had a situation in 2004 where you were talking of shining India, where you're talking of the feel-good factor, and we all know what happened. So let's not go into that. This is not scoring political points. If there is an economic point that the finance minister said today, that the fiscal deficit and fiscal consolidation has taken place, I am saying that whatever be the figures that Mr. Tewari is now suggesting, to look at both the plans together, central and the state, the fact of the matter is, in print, he has circulated documents which tell you that there is a massive contraction of expenditures, which means a contraction of the economy, which means future revenues are going to fall, which means a worsening of the fiscal situation in the days ahead. Okay, you're going in for elections, so that is the headache of the next finance minister, whoever it may be. But the point is that if you're talking of the health of the economy, I think this is more of a political statement rather than a budgetary exercise, and that should be recognized as it is, because it's on the eve of the elections. And that is what this is all about, because in terms of hard economics, as I said earlier, it's not policy paralysis, but it's the policy. It's the policy that is responsible for the state of this world. The state of this problem. And I mean, apart from smart alecky comments, and in the lighter vein, I'm not going into those aspects. But if you want a serious discussion on this, then this merits a serious consideration on what is the actual state of our economy and what is its health. It's not in terms of real rhetoric and scoring points.
I take your point. Ravi Shankar Prasad has been raising his hand for some time. Mr. Prasad, floor is yours to Manish Tewari. Go ahead.
3 quick points, Arnab. This whole argument of law of average is quite curious. Something akin to a boy failed in his high school final board examination. When his father asked him what did you do, he said, "Dad, see my average performance in class 4, 5 and 6, even if I have failed." That's what exactly the argument of Mr. Manish Tewari is. From 4.8, Mr. Bajpayee government left you a legacy of 8.5, which your finance minister, Mr. Chidambaram, personally complimented in 2004 and 5 while presenting the economic survey. I'm having the copy. Why you squander it away? Point number 1. Point number 2. Arnab, are Indians keen to invest in India? Forget about international investors. You get a survey done, I challenge Mr. Manish Tewari. Are the Indian companies, Indian entrepreneurs are investing in India? They are not, because the atmosphere is not conducive. And Arnab, I will just share 2 documents for the sake of your viewers. I have got the KPMG report of November 2013, a recent report, which says at the end of 2011-12, 78 power projects with planned capacity of 1,03,000 megawatts were pending for environmental clearance. That is the policy paralysis. I have got the answer question number 3, given on 5th December 2013 by the Minister for Road Construction, which Arnab must note. He says this year the National Highway Authority could award only one project of 123 kilometers on BOT under PPP mode. Today, Mr. Chidambaram is talking of PPP mode. And for the last 1 year, because of corruption, indecision, policy paralysis, only one project could be awarded.
It's a shame.
That is the real issue.
It's a shame.
Mr. Tewari, your minister is staying on the floor of the House.
It's a shame, but I'd like to... 1 second. You raise a paper and the minister raises his hand.
One last point.
2 minutes. 1 second. Suresh Prabhu wants to come into the debate.
But very quickly. One last point. Very quickly.
Suresh Prabhu.
Arnab, 1 point very quickly on the GST. I have been a member of Finance Committee, Standing Committee. We examined the GST. I think Mr. Derrick is completely right. State after state, be it Trinamool, be it BJP, Odisha, others have been demanding a fair distribution. And that 20,000 crore was agreed upon. The government of India did not do so, the payment as stipulated, as agreed.
Anyway,
therefore, I'm sorry to say that Chidambaram was not right when he made that comment.
I find... this selective... You see, my biggest concern today, Manish Tewari, is with the selective interpretation of facts, cut and paste done by the finance minister, which really is questionable. I mean, I really think... Suresh Prabhu, let me get you in. Manish Tewari, I'll give you a full turn. I just want to get their view also. I'm coming to you. You see, the finance minister comes out and he says that the foreign rating agencies have said that India has stabilized. Did the finance minister say that talk about the strengths counterbalanced by significant weaknesses? I'm now quoting S&P, which include an onerous burden from its public finance, lack of progress on structural reforms, shortfall in basic services typical of a nation with a GDP of 1,500, fiscal constraints, poverty levels, fraying of the social contract, putting at risk the declining trend in government debt. All of this, the finance minister does not mention. The finance minister simply mentions that foreign rating agencies have not reduced our rating. He completely overrides the observations made by Fitch, made by Moody's, made by S&P. And that's not being very honest, is it, Mr. Tewari? But that's my second question to you. Suresh Prabhu, was the finance minister being honest when he said no policy paralysis, rating agencies haven't worsened our status? Was the finance minister being honest with the people of the country?
Yes. Basically, you must clearly admit that any budget which is presented to the parliament has 2 points. One is the account of the past period and one is for the future. In past, it is not an account because it suppresses all the major issues. At least 2.5% of the GDP should have been, the fiscal deficit should have been higher by 2.5% of GDP if all the expenditure accountable to this period would have been accounted in this period. Fertilizer companies have been told, don't take subsidy from us because that will increase my fiscal deficit. You borrow from the bank, I will give 6% interest. Fertilizer companies have gone to the court saying that if you are forced to borrow because it's a fertilizer subsidy which is my entitlement, then why I am asked to bear the remainder cost of the interest. But this is one part. The secondly, so many off-balance sheet items which should have been accounted in the books of account for this period, then probably the fiscal deficit would have been much higher. So it is not an account. It is only for vote. So it's not vote on account, it is only for vote and no account. This is as far as the past year is concerned. For the future, very clearly, where is the investment coming? The capex, the capital expenditure has been dropped drastically to just fudge the figure so that the fiscal deficit for future goes down. If you do not invest into capital expenditure today, you reduce the plan expenditure continuously year after year, which is started by Manmohan Singh in 1991 to reduce the fiscal deficit at that time. Yeah. What is the effect? The future growth rate cannot come. Number three, you are talking about creating new employment. It is a question of first protecting present employment. How many jobs have been lost in the last 5 years? Innumerable loss. Then you try to again put a figure by saying last 10 years growth rate, compounded growth rate is like this. Why not take 60 years growth rate? Why not, if at all you want to talk about the government performance, if the Congress was ruling for 55 out of 60 years, why not take 55 years growth rate and say whether the government has done better or bad? So I think what is more important is the power sector. One point I want to just out power sector. See, power sector is in such a bad shape today that we are only talking about only creating capacity future, but there is a challenge.
Mr. Prabhu, if we make too many points together, we lose the strain of the argument. We lose the line of argument. I think the point which is being made repeatedly, and Mr. Tewari, please understand this, everybody cannot be wrong. Everybody, almost everyone except the Congress party, is today saying Mr. Chidambaram was window dressing, and we have seen through it. Very specific.
Unfortunately, Mr. Goswami,
almost some gimmickry there. Let me give you 2-3 examples after he finishes.
Allow me to respond.
Yes. Sure.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
You know, unfortunately, we cannot also overlook the fact that everybody is also into an open election season. So therefore, you know, what passes off as an economic debate is actually political brownie point scoring. And allow me to rebut it one by one. No, first of all, I would like to ask you, is it a fact or not that India was not downgraded, unlike a lot of other emerging economies which got downgraded? Allow me to complete. You'll get a chance to answer. So therefore, is it not a fact that because of fiscal prudence, which was followed by the UPA government, you had a situation whereby no agency, you know, was able to downgrade the Indian economy? Number two, I would like to ask you, from 1991 to 2004, during the whole period of economic liberalization, allow me to make the point. Allow me to make the point.
I'm getting too many rebuts not to allow me.
Allow me to make the point.
Mr. Manish Tewari, it's not about fiscal discipline. It's about the fact that you actually cut plan and non-plan expenditure, especially on the capital account, which means that you only did revenue expenditure. You did not do any investments. You have frittered away the money that you had, and that is what you call fiscal prudence.
And this is
I suggest that you read the budget a little more carefully. That's why I was saying, if you read the central plan in juxtaposition with the state plan, you will not come to such erroneous conclusions.
Let's look at the numbers.
So therefore, allow me to complete.
Let's look at the numbers. You've challenged us on the numbers.
Mr. Goswami, if the intent is to railroad and not hear a counter argument, then it's a different point of view. But since you've allowed everybody a chance, since you've allowed everybody a chance, I think you should have the patience and the perseverance to hear the answer also. From 1991 to 2004, you had a phenomena, in liberalization which was called jobless growth. From 2004 to 2014, you've had inclusive growth. whereby the fruits of growth have actually percolated down to the last man. How is it that 140 million people have been raised out of poverty? If the Indian economy was doing all that badly, you know, how come 14 crore people have been driven out of poverty? Now, have the patience. Have the patience to listen.
You're rolling. No, Mr. Tewari, Mr. Tewari, I have tremendous patience to listen. But I must ask you today that, Mr. Tewari, are your numbers incorrect or are my numbers incorrect? I strongly suspect, with the greatest of respect to you, Mr. Minister, that your numbers are incorrect, because the government today cut 79,790 crore from the budgeted plan expenditure of 555,532 crores for the current fiscal, against the backdrop of this huge fiscal deficit. And there was an increase in non-planned expenditure, which Navika can tell you about, which was also simultaneously announced. So, you know, and I don't have to tell you, basic economics is planned expenditure is productive asset creation. Non-planned expenditure is non-productive asset creation. So Suresh Prabhu is right when he's saying you are investing in creating non-productive assets.
And you're talking about inclusive growth, Mr. Tewari. 4 percentage point drop in GDP is equal to loss of 70 lakh jobs, given the fact that every percentage of GDP actually creates 7.5 lakh jobs. So 70 lakh jobs gone, and you call this growth?
Navika, I would request you once again, please go and revisit the budget numbers. Look at the central plan and the state plan in juxtaposition with each other.
Here is the actual numbers from the budget document.
No underfunding of any of the flagship programs.
But listen,
even the Food Security Act, which is going to provide...
Please listen to this.
India's population.
This is the actual budget document.
Has been fully funded.
This is the actual interim budget document.
This is
the actual interim budget document. And what does it say?
And we've only...
No, if Mr. Tewari will just listen to me for a minute.
This is completely an erroneous argument.
No, Mr. Goswami, just listen to this one figure. That will do. And since Mr. Tewari said we should read the budget documents more carefully, I'm just quoting it from a budget document. And what does it say? Total budget support for the central plan. What was Mr. Chidambaram's own estimate when he presented the budget last year? 4,19,068 lakh crores. And how much is it now in the revised estimate? 3,56,493. Is this a concrete fall or not? Is this a concrete fall or not, Mr. Tewari? That is the point what I'm saying.
Read the central plan and state plan in juxtaposition. Because you would find...
Yes, and look for the state plan. And look at the state plan. Look at the state plan, Mr. Tewari.
I'm
telling you, total central assistance to the state and the union territory plans has come down from 1,36,000 to 1,19,000. This is the central assistance for state and union territories plans. Both have come down. Your budgetary support to the central plan, your assistance to the state and the UT plan. This is your budget document.
The state plan for this year over the state plan for last year.
This is the collation of all these plans, Mr. Tewari. Anybody who knows the budget document will tell you this.
Trend line which is going up. It doesn't represent the trend line which is coming down.
This is the collation.
Okay, one sec. Please, let's be calm on the panel. Ravi Shankar Prasad, hands goes up. Mr. Tewari says today you've not read the numbers. Mr. Tewari, I want you to attract your attention to the finance minister's cutting of planned spending by 79,790 crores, which amounts to a 14.4% cut from the budget estimate for 2013-14. Now, in the last budget, Mr. Tewari, and you're a man who understands numbers. Allow me to complete. Now, you're going to roll me over with a road roller. I know you will roll me over with a road roller, but I will not allow you.
You cannot be rolled over even with a bulldozer, so therefore, that's besides the point. But
Mr. I'm glad we retain our sense of humor in this. Now, in the last budget, Chidambaram said he's raising the planned spending by 34%, but by ending 14.4% down. What does this indicate? This clearly indicates that he's attempting to tame the fiscal deficit numbers, which is where I come back with.
Mr. Goswami, first of all, there is nothing wrong in taming the fiscal
You know these
deficit.
numbers are correct.
If you've drawn some red line and you decide to stick to it and actually do better, the finance minister should be getting an E for effort and not an upbraiding by Mr. Goswami. And the second thing which I've requested you time and again, please read the central plan in juxtaposition with the state plan, because a lot of the flagship programs, the state component, which earlier on used to be in the central plan, is accounted in the state plan. You would actually find that there has been no cut down in expenditure. And if you want, I can sit down with you, go over every sector and demonstrate to you that there has been no contraction.
All right. No. First of all, let me tell our viewers how much time we've got before we hit the break. We got 3 minutes. We have a lot of provoked people. Shankar Prasad's hand has been going up for a long time. Derek O'Brien wants 30 seconds. Navika wants 30 seconds.
I want 30 seconds.
Wants 30 seconds. Where do we start? I give Navika 30 seconds that starts.
Let me say goodbye.
The state numbers are numbers that Mr. Manish Tewari is extremely obsessed with. Let me give you the state numbers. As far as state share in taxes and duties is concerned, 22,000 crore is something that you've taken away from states. It's less. It's a reduction in the taxes that you're giving states. This figure I'm reading from this book, it is Budget at a Glance. It's on page number 18. It's the last page. You would like to look at these numbers.
Let him reply.
Please read the state plan.
That is exactly what I was quoting.
What you are reading is actually revenue receipts which have gone to the states. But please also look at it in conjunction with the state plan. You would actually find that the state plan over last year has gone up. After 5,50,000 crores is the total resources that have been transferred from the state to the center.
Manish Tewari, now come on, Mr. Manish Tewari, 30 seconds. Derek O'Brien.
I didn't want to talk about state, but since I got a chance, a quick word, then I've got two quick points.
Quickly, 30 seconds.
West Bengal collects 40,000 crores as revenue. 20,000 crores was collected 2 years ago. We pay center 28,000 crores. That's the real number, Mr. Tewari. But you call this window dressing. I just point out a couple of gimmicks. Quick. Yes, very quick gimmicks. This is indirect taxes on a vote on account. Why do you have to meddle with those car prices? You're the same person who put SUV up last time. Not a word about black money. Not a 45 lakh crores lying outside. And one rank, one pension, heart of heart, very good, but 500 crores.
But my question is, how did Rahul Gandhi have extrasensory perception?
No. This is our brave soldiers. You're not. They're also you're doing gimmicks with them.
Okay, Ravi Shankar Prasad to Manish Tewari.
Now, Mr. Manish Tewari is talking of inclusive growth and social sector. Why is it in today's budget, the grant of Ministry of Drinking, Water and Sanitation is cut down by 21.3%? Ministry of Health and Welfare is cut down by 20.6%. Housing and Urban Poverty Alleviation is cut down by 41.7%. Ministry of HRD by 6%. Only the Ministry of Finance grant has been raised by 18%. The point try to understand this. Mr. Chidambaram has no leg room available at all. He could not make any new announcement, though there is no legal bar in a vote on account as well, in spite of approaching election. Because the state of economy is such that Mr. Chidambaram has no leg room at all. Unemployment is such in a bad state. People are suffering because of unemployment, because of inflation.
Okay, gentlemen, I'm really running short of time.
Last point. On this one rank, one pension, in 2009, they came with a proposal. Nothing was done. And when Mr. Rahul Gandhi is taking credit, today ex-armed people filed a contempt in Delhi High Court of non-implementation of Supreme Court order.
Okay, Suresh Prabhu, last word. Last word is one versus many. Suresh Prabhu, please. Suresh Prabhu to the minister. We are closing after that.
Yeah, see, one point I would like to ask my good friend Manish Tewari, because, he's talking about the capex not going down, the plan expenditure and the support to plan, despite going down, the state plan has increased. Can you give me one figure? We have said that in this particular 5-year plan period, the investment that is necessary in infrastructure is $1 trillion. What does it mean by implication? Is that every 1 year you must spend $200 billion into infrastructure investment. Could you please give me the figure?
Okay, Manish Tewari, quickly.
Mr. Goswami, I could have answered each of those points.
Could you tell me that,
I could have answered each of those points individually, but allow me to leave you with one big takeaway. And the one big takeaway is that between 2004 and 2014, despite vicissitudes in the global economy, the Indian economy has not only performed well, but on every front, we have been able to better consolidate the fundamentals of the Indian economy. And today you have a situation where the economy is far more robust than what we inherited it in 2004. I think that's the big takeaway of the last 10 years.
Even though without basis. SUVs cheaper by your government, run on diesel which is subsidized by your government. Is this the inclusive growth that you're talking about?
Okay, well that's good.
Navika, get me a diesel of a different color, which can go into an SUV, and a diesel of a different color which can go into other automobiles. The automobile industry needed a fillip, and so therefore there was an adjustment.
What can I say?
So I think on balance,
Mr. Tewari?
we are confident that history is going to judge these 10 years in an extremely charitable manner, because we are leaving an economy today on the cusp of an election with the hope of coming back that what we inherited in 2004 and what we are leaving in 2014 is an economy which is far more stronger in the fundamentals.
I'd only say one thing, that your confidence tonight is about as large as India's import bill. Manish Tewari, thank you for debating that. Ravi, Shankar, Prasad, Derek O'Brien, Suresh, Prabhu, Rajiv Chandrasekhar and Navika, thanks very much. We're coming back to debate number 2 in 2 minutes.